In a deadly snowstorm, a little girl and her loyal dog found a half-buried police car. Inside, an officer was unconscious. What happened next would stun the entire town and leave everyone speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Snow fell in thick, heavy sheets, smothering the small mountain town in a blanket of white silence. The streets were nearly deserted, lamps glowing faintly through the swirling storm. 8-year-old Emily trudged forward, her red coat dusted with frost, boots sinking deep into the drifts. Beside her padded Max, her loyal German shepherd, his sharp eyes scanning the snowbound path ahead. The blizzard was growing worse, winds howling like restless spirits through the trees. Emily tightened her scarf, clutching the leash as Max tugged forward, nose pressed low to the ground. He wasn't walking casually anymore. Something had caught his attention. His ears twitched, his movements urgent, almost desperate. Emily's small voice trembled in the cold air. "Max, what is it?" But the dog didn't stop. He pulled her off the narrow path and toward a stretch of trees weighed down by ice. Her heart pounded as they stumbled through the snow until, suddenly, she saw it. Through the blur of white loomed the dark shape of a police car, half buried under snow. Its windshield was shattered, the driver's side dented from an unseen impact. Inside, through the frosted glass, Emily glimpsed something that made her freeze. A man, motionless. Emily's breath fogged against the icy window as she pressed her mittened hands to the glass. "Sir? Can you hear me?" she cried, her voice trembling. The officer didn't stir. His head slumped against the seat. Face pale, lips bluish from the cold. Panic rose in Emily's chest like a tidal wave. Max barked furiously, his paws scraping at the door, his growls echoing in the storm. The sound cut through the blizzard, sharp and urgent. Emily glanced around desperately. No one was nearby. The snowstorm had swallowed the streets, leaving only her, Max, and the silent car. For a fleeting second, she thought of running home, of escaping this terrifying scene. But then her gaze returned to the officer. His shallow breaths fogged the glass for only a moment before fading again. He wasn't just trapped, he was slipping away. Emily's fear tangled with something else, something stronger, courage. Her grandmother's words echoed in her memory. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act anyway. Her small fists tightened. She couldn't run. Not now. Max barked louder, urging her on, as if he too knew the truth. If they didn't act soon, the officer wouldn't survive. Emily grabbed the frozen door handle and pulled with all her strength. It didn't budge. Ice had sealed the metal shut like cement. Her mittens slipped against the frosty surface as tears of frustration stung her eyes. "Please, open," she whispered, yanking again. Max barked furiously, pawing at the car, his claws scraping the paint. She leaned her weight into the handle, the cold biting through her gloves. The storm raged around her, snow whipping across her face, but she refused to give up. With one final desperate tug, the door groaned, then cracked open an inch. A blast of freezing air rushed out, carrying the faint sound of a ragged breath. The officer was alive, barely. Emily pulled harder until the gap widened enough to squeeze through. The smell of gasoline mixed with the icy air, making her cough. She climbed halfway inside, her small hands fumbling to shake the officer's shoulder. "Wake up. Please, you have to wake up." His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Her heart pounded. She was only a child. What could she do? For a split second, hopelessness threatened to consume her. Then, like a spark in the darkness, she remembered her grandmother's voice. "Never leave someone behind, Emily. Not when they need you most." The words filled her with determination. She couldn't carry him, couldn't fix his injuries, but she could fight for his chance to live. She turned to Max, gripping his fur tightly. "Go, boy. Get help." Max's ears perked up at Emily's command. For a moment, he hesitated, his sharp eyes locked on the officer slumped in the seat. Then, with a final bark, he bounded into the storm, his dark figure vanishing into the swirling white. Emily's chest tightened as she watched him go, praying he understood. The wind howled through the broken window, chilling her to the bone. She pulled off her scarf and clumsily wrapped it around the officer's neck, tucking it close to his chest. His breaths were faint, but still there. "Hold on," she whispered, voice cracking. Her hands trembled as she tried to shield him from the cold, though she was shivering herself. Meanwhile, Max tore across the snow-covered road, paws sinking deep with every leap. His powerful barks echoed through the storm, cutting through the silence like a desperate alarm. He darted past houses, stopping at doorsteps, barking wildly, refusing to be ignored. People peeked outside, startled by the frantic German shepherd fighting against the blizzard. One man shouted, "Something's wrong," as Max spun in circles, then sprinted back toward the woods, pausing only to bark again. The townspeople exchanged worried looks, then followed. Max's paws pounded against the snow as he raced back toward the woods, stopping every few steps to bark and glance behind him. The group of townspeople, bundled in coats and scarves, hurried after him. "Follow the dog," someone yelled, their voices nearly lost in the storm. Lanterns and flashlights bobbed through the white haze as they pushed forward. At last, Max led them to the wreck. Emily was still crouched by the open door, her cheeks red from cold, her arms wrapped tightly around the officer. Relief flooded her eyes when she saw familiar faces breaking through the storm. "Please, he's not breathing right," she cried out. Two men rushed to her side, while others pulled out their phones to call for help. One bent low, checking the officer's pulse. His face tightened. "He's fading fast. We need to move him now." Another quickly wrapped a blanket around the officer, while Emily stepped back, her small frame shaking with exhaustion. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder as the storm swallowed sound. Moments later, emergency responders arrived, their bright jackets glowing under the snow-laden trees. They worked quickly, lifting the officer onto a stretcher, attaching oxygen, and shouting commands over the roar of the wind. The crowd stood stunned, whispering about how a little girl and her dog had found him. Emily clutched Max tightly when he returned, burying her face in his fur. The officer's life, once slipping away, now had a chance because of them. News of the rescue spread quickly through the small town. By morning, every doorstep and diner booth buzzed with the same story. A brave little girl and her loyal dog had found a police officer trapped in the snow and saved his life. People shook their heads in disbelief, marveling at the courage it had taken. At the hospital, the officer regained consciousness. His voice was weak, but his eyes filled with gratitude when Emily and Max entered the room. He reached out a trembling hand, resting it gently on Max's head. "You're my guardian angel," he whispered. The dog's tail thumped softly, as though he understood every word. The townspeople gathered outside later that day, not out of curiosity, but out of respect. For years, their town had been quiet, almost forgotten in the world. But now it was united by a story of hope, courage, and loyalty that no one would ever forget. Emily stood beside Max, her cheeks flushed, eyes wide as neighbors praised her bravery. She didn't feel like a hero. She had simply done what felt right. But as she looked down at Max, she knew the truth. Sometimes, miracles begin with love and loyalty.